We are now 6 days into America and Israel's war on the Iranian government. The IRGC has been launching missiles haphazardly at Gulf countries, and no one knows what is going on. And a lot of people are freaking out right now. Misinformation is everywhere. But I want to talk about something specific. I wanted to address a specific sentiment I've seen floating around. Here's an example. Some US commanders framing Iran attack as holy war, soldiers say. President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth. So, we have to ask the question, is it the plan of the American military to bring about the Battle of Armageddon and trigger the return of Jesus? The answer to that question is no. But let's dig a little deeper. Now, I don't doubt that you'll find some random American military commander that believes we're in the last days and he's fighting the Battle of Armageddon. In the same way, you get a lot of Muslim commentators believing that Dajjal is about to show up and the Mahdi is about to return, right? This is a universal thing, people getting a little overhyped about the apocalypse. But I want to break down the Christian theology behind this and show you actually have nothing to worry about right now. In the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, it describes the return of Jesus, and that's immediately followed by this passage. And he sees the dragon, that ancient serpent, who was the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. Any Christian that believes the Bible does believe that Jesus will literally physically return at the end of history. But there are actually 4 main views within Christianity of how exactly this is going to happen. The first is premillennialism, and that's a straightforward reading of the text that believes this 1,000 years is a literal 1,000 years in the future after Jesus returns. There's a final rebellion, Jesus defeats it, which brings about the final resurrection, and then the next view is the amillennial view, and this is the view that the 1,000 years mentioned in Revelation is a metaphor, and then at the end of time, Jesus returns, banishes evil forever. The third view is postmillennialism. The idea that this 1,000 years described in Revelation is literal, it is in the future, but it's not triggered by some massive conflict, it's actually triggered by the gradual advance of God's kingdom in the world. Not through force, not through violence, but by the winning of individual hearts and minds, which gradually improve the world around it to the point that Jesus returns physically. The final view here is dispensational premillennialism, that believes that God works in the world in different eras, and the final era of the world is going to be when all Christians on earth disappear in something called the rapture, which is going to result in all the Jews becoming Christians, which triggers the rise of the Antichrist, and then Jesus returns to destroy the Antichrist and then judge the world, and then you have the 1,000 years, and then you have the final judgment. Now, typically, if you find people who are trying to trigger the end of the world, those people are dispensationalists, who also tend to read very heavily into the return of Israel in 1948. They draw a very straight line between that and biblical prophecy. Now, I need to be clear. There are many dispensationalists who are crazy, but there are many more who are not. And any Christian who is seriously reading the Bible is not going to have the problem of trying to trigger the end of the world. Because when Jesus was about to ascend into heaven, his disciples asked him, "Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel?" He said to them, "It is not for you to know times or seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and the end of the earth." So Jesus explicitly tells his disciples, do not preoccupy yourself thinking about the end of the world. Focus on doing the good that I have told you to do. As Christians, what we're supposed to be focused on is loving and trusting God, loving our neighbors and speaking the truth in love, and spreading God's goodness to the ends of the earth. Now, we should be preparing for the return of Jesus, but not with a geopolitical strategy. Jesus is clear. Therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. As Christians, we should always be prepared to meet Jesus, either when we die or when he returns. But we don't do that through geopolitical maneuvering. We do that by staying close to God and staying away from sin. One of the biggest concerns people have here, a dot people are connecting, is you have evangelical Christian voices allegedly in the US military believing we're in the battle for Armageddon. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, is an evangelical Christian. So does the head of the US military believe this is the apocalypse? And I can almost guarantee you no. While I don't know Pete Hegseth personally, he is part of a denomination called the CREC, and people will say a lot of things about them, but one thing they are definitely not are dispensationalists. In fact, the largest influence in that denomination is a guy called Douglas Wilson, who's actually a proponent of the postmillennial view. For those of you who need a recap, postmillennialism is the idea that Jesus will return a long time in the future after Christianity has significantly improved the world that we live in. Now, while I don't know Pete Hegseth personally, I do actually know Douglas Wilson personally. We've got lunch a couple of times. I've been over to his house for dinner. I've talked to his grandkids about Clone Wars. I email him whenever he talks about Christianity and Islam, give him some feedback. Sometimes he even returns my emails. If you want to understand the worldview of Christians within the CREC, these are not people that believe the apocalypse is imminent. They actually believe the world is going to be here for thousands of years more. Therefore, they're focused on building institutions, leaving a generational legacy, and trying to do pragmatic good in the world. While many people in the CREC are positively disposed towards Israel, that doesn't mean they think it's some fulfillment of some ancient prophecy. It's much more pragmatic than that, which means they don't want Israel to take over the whole Middle East. They don't want Israel to succeed to the detriment of all the Arab nations. In general, they want everybody to have a good future. I know everything's crazy right now. No one knows how the war will end. The dust has not settled, the pieces have not yet fallen into place. What I know for sure is when this all ends, what we do not need are more people who are obsessed with the apocalypse. It instead needs people who are prepared to get their hands dirty and to build something good.